Jessica's jaw dropped as she stood on her doorstep, staring at the stranger in the cheap suit. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" she asked, struggling to grasp his words. "My great-aunt Amanda left me an inheritance," he said, flashing a patronizing smile. "Yes, ma'am. It seems your aunt was quite well off, though most didn't realize it. Funny how the elderly can surprise us, isn't it?" Jessica let out an incredulous laugh. "Aunt Amanda wealthy? You must have the wrong person. That woman lived like a beggar." "Be that as it may," he replied with a nonchalant shrug. "Your presence is requested at the reading of her will this Friday at 3 p.m. sharp at McGrady & Sons Law Offices downtown. Don't be late." With a tip of his hat, he turned to leave. "Wait," Jessica called, but he was already striding briskly to his car. She closed the door slowly, her mind reeling. An inheritance from Aunt Amanda? It made no sense at all. Seated at her small kitchen table, Jessica nursed a cup of coffee, reflecting on her relationship with her great-aunt. They had never been particularly close. Amanda was a mean-spirited, miserly woman who rarely offered a kind word. Still, Jessica had made an effort over the years, visiting regularly, helping with chores, bringing meals, and planning birthday celebrations. No matter how poorly Amanda behaved, Jessica always wore a patient smile. Her husband, Stephen, had a far lower tolerance for the old battle axe. He had only met Amanda a handful of times, once before their wedding and a couple of times after, but that was more than enough. The way she lived and her snide remarks about him convinced him there was no reason to endure her miserable company. Jessica sighed, pondering the possibility that the lawyer's claims might hold some truth. Could Amanda have been secretly wealthy all along? She tried to imagine what an inheritance might mean for her life. Maybe she could finally quit her second job waiting tables on weekends. Perhaps she could enjoy a decent night's sleep for once. Glancing up at the clock, she swore under her breath, if she didn't hurry, she'd be late for her shift at the diner. She gulped down the rest of her coffee, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. She needed to call Stephen from the bus to share this perplexing news. Fortune smiled upon her as she found a seat on the crowded bus. Pulling out her phone, she dialed Stephen's number, hoping he was feeling well enough to talk. "Hey, babe," he answered groggily. "What's up?" "You won't believe what just happened," Jessica began. "A lawyer visited me, claiming Aunt Amanda left me an inheritance. An inheritance. Can you believe it?" Stephen let out a low whistle. Wow, the old bird had some hidden wealth after all. "Yeah, I'm supposed to attend the will reading on Friday afternoon. I don't know what to make of it." "Well, that's great news," Stephen replied, though his enthusiasm felt forced. "Maybe you can finally take some time off work. You deserve a break." Jessica smiled sadly. "If only it were that simple. We'll see. How are you feeling today? Any updates from your mom?" Stephen's mother, Emma, worked at Mercy Hospital and had been trying to get him seen by specialists for his ongoing health issues. His sensitive constitution made it nearly impossible for him to keep a job for more than a day or two, often resulting in panic attacks and ER visits. Jessica had been working herself to the bone to afford his expensive vitamin regimens and herbal supplements. "Oh, you know, the usual," Stephen sighed dramatically. "I don't know, hon. Maybe it's time to accept my fate as an invalid. Reproducing would probably be irresponsible with my weak genes anyway." Jessica bit her tongue, suppressing the ache in her heart at the thought of the baby they had planned to try for this year. "Don't say that," she replied softly. "You're going to get better, I know it. Just keep resting and let your mom work her magic, okay? I'll visit you tomorrow at the hospital." After exchanging "I love you," Jessica hung up the phone and gazed out the bus window, trying to block out Stephen's negativity. She had to remain hopeful. Perhaps this inheritance was the stroke of good luck they so desperately needed. The next morning, Jessica arrived at room 242 in Mercy Hospital, excited to see Stephen. She knocked twice and entered with a bright smile, but it quickly faded as she saw him scowling from his bed. "Hey babe," she said cheerfully, leaning in for a kiss, but he turned his head away. "You didn't put on any makeup today. Seriously?" he asked irritably. "Every other wife on this floor looks like a model when they visit, and I'm stuck with a hack." Jessica recoiled as if struck. "Stephen, how can you say that to me? You know how exhausted I am from work. I barely have time to. Yeah, you're a big martyr. I get it. He cut her off, waving his hand dismissively. When's that inheritance money coming in again? Hopefully soon, so you can actually make yourself presentable. Blinking back tears, Jessica turned and fled the room without another word, stumbling down the hallway until she collapsed on a bench near the elevators. Was this really what her marriage had come to? With her head in her hands, she overheard two male patients strolling by. I told my old lady I had to stay here through the weekend for tests. One chuckled to the other. Really? I've got a poker game lined up with the orderly and enough booze to drop an elephant. Same, bro, his friend replied with a grin. What the wives don't know won't hurt them, right? They think we're saints for being stuck here. Jessica felt nauseous. Did all men behave this way behind closed doors? She shook her head firmly. No, not her Stephen. He would never deceive her like that. He was just cranky from being cooped up. Taking a deep breath, she dried her eyes and stepped out into the bright sunlight. Tomorrow was the big day, and she needed to focus on that. Friday morning dawned crisp and clear. Jessica woke up early, determined to make the apartment spotless before Stephen returned home on Monday. She still couldn't quite wrap her head around the idea of receiving an inheritance. Her family had never had 2 nickels to rub together while she was growing up. But maybe this was the fresh start they needed to finally get ahead. Arriving at the lawyer's office an hour ahead of schedule, Jessica was ushered into a plush waiting room by a friendly receptionist. Coffee? The young woman offered. Yes, please, Jessica replied gratefully, sinking into an emerald green armchair that probably cost more than her entire living room set. Just as she was stirring in her cream and sugar, her cell phone buzzed incessantly. Stephen, she muttered, guessing he was calling to ask about the inheritance. She answered, rolling her eyes good-naturedly. Oh yeah, Stephen, can you blame me? This is huge. Han, spill the beans already. I won't know anything for at least another hour, she explained patiently. I promise, as soon as I have a number, you'll be the first to know. As the minutes ticked by, Jessica's anxiety intensified. What would she do if the inheritance was life-changing? What if it wasn't? When her name was finally called, her heart leaped into her throat. Miss Jessica, please come with me. The plush carpet muffled her footsteps as she was led into a stately office lined with law books. An older gentleman in a 3-piece suit rose from behind a massive oak desk to shake her hand. Miss Jessica, I'm Bernard McGrady. So glad you could make it today. Thank you for having me, Jessica replied automatically, taking a seat across from him. I have to admit this is all quite overwhelming. My aunt wasn't exactly forthcoming about her finances. Mr. McGrady chuckled. No, she certainly had a reputation for being tight-lipped. But I can assure you, your great-aunt Amanda was a woman of considerable means. He slid a file folder across the desk to her. Jessica opened it with trembling hands and nearly fell out of her chair when she saw the number printed on the page. This has to be a mistake, she gasped. There are too many zeros. It can't possibly be $6. 5 million. Mr. McGrady smiled. Let me assure you, there's no mistake. Jessica clutched the folder to her chest, her head spinning. $6. 5 million. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. Wait until Stephen heard about this. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone under the desk and typed a text to her husband. Inheritance is $6,500. Can you believe it? In her excitement, she didn't even realize she left off the last 3 crucial zeros before hitting send. Unable to sit through the rest of the meeting, Jessica made hasty excuses about needing to process the shocking news and fled the office. Clutching the legal folder containing her new future, she had to see Stephen right away and share this incredible, life-altering development. He was going to absolutely flip. Bypassing the bus, she hailed a cab and barked out the address to Mercy Hospital, fidgeting the whole way there as the city blocks crawled by. When the car finally pulled up to the main entrance, she threw a wad of bills at the driver, not even bothering to wait for change. Taking the stairs 2 at a time up to the 2nd floor, she burst with excitement to reveal their new fortune to the love of her life. As she approached room 242, however, the sound of familiar voices made her pause outside the door. It was Stephen and his mother, Emma. Deep in conversation, Jessica knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but something compelled her to remain still and listen. "And the stupid cow actually bought it," Stephen said, his tone dripping with derision. "Can you believe she thinks I'm actually sick? Like I'd ever waste my time in this hellhole if I didn't have to?" Emma laughed. "You've got her wrapped around your finger, so naive. That one, I still can't believe you married so far beneath you." "Tell me about it." Stephen groaned. "But did you hear the best part? Aunt Amanda left some money. Once she gets that transferred over to my account, I'm dropping her like a bad habit. Let her keep playing nurse and housekeeper to some other sap." Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She blinked rapidly, convinced she must be having some sort of nightmare. There was no way this could be real, but the cavalier laughter coming from Stephen and Emma confirmed the devastating truth. Her entire marriage, her entire life with this man, had been a lie. Unable to listen to another word, she turned and fled, not even noticing the hot tears streaming down her cheeks. She ran until her lungs burned and her feet ached. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, she found herself by the East River, staring out at the murky water. As she watched the swirling currents, Aunt Amanda's voice echoed in her head, "That boy is a lazy freeloader who's going to bleed you dry." The old woman had warned Jessica after meeting Stephen for the first time. "Mark my words, Missy, you're making a huge mistake." At the time, Jessica had dismissed it as the ramblings of a bitter old spinster. But now, with her heart shattered into a million pieces, she saw the truth with stunning clarity. Aunt Amanda had been right all along, and by some miracle, she had ensured Jessica would have the means to break free before it was too late. Squaring her shoulders, Jessica turned her back on the river and strolled purposefully down the sidewalk. She had calls to make and divorce papers to file. As for Stephen, he would be in for the shock of his life when he came home on Monday to an empty apartment. In the meantime, Jessica decided she would stay with her best friend, Tara, for a few days before embarking on a much-needed solo trip to the Hamptons to heal. For the first time in years, as the warm June sun beat down on her face, Jessica felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her life wasn't ruined after all. Perhaps this was just the start of an incredible new chapter. She couldn't wait to find out. 3 days later, Stephen hobbled to the door of their apartment, prescription pain meds in hand. "Honey, I'm home," he called out mockingly. "Where's my inheritance check?" Silence greeted him. Frowning, he looked around in confusion, noticing the bare walls and empty shelves for the first time. A single sheet of paper lay on the kitchen counter. "Dear Stephen," it began in Jessica's familiar loopy script. "By the time you read this, I'll be long gone. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, I know everything. I know you've been faking being sick to avoid working. I know you and your mother have been laughing at me behind my back. And I know you were planning to take my money and run. Well, the joke's on you. Because that inheritance wasn't $65,000. It was $6. 5 million, and every penny of it is mine. I've already filed for divorce. You have 30 days to collect your things and get out of my apartment. Have a nice life. Jessica." Stephen let out a strangled yell of shock and rage as the letter fluttered to the floor. He kicked a chair in frustration, swearing up a storm. How had he underestimated her so badly? He thought he had her under his thumb. As he sank to the ground in defeat, Jessica was worlds away, stretched out on a beach chair with the sea breeze ruffling her hair. She sipped a fruity cocktail while watching the waves roll in, contemplating the cozy beach bungalow she had just put an offer on. "Everything happens for a reason," Aunt Amanda used to say. Jessica raised her glass to the sky in a silent toast, thanking her wise aunt for the lesson and the inheritance.